Of course, strictly speaking, he knew me, but I was an uninvited guest at the luncheon. The general had forgotten to arrange otherwise, or I should have been dispatched to dine at the table. Nevertheless, I presented myself in such guise that the general looked at me with a touch of approval, and though the good Maria Philipovna was for showing me my place, the fact of my having previously met the Englishman, Mr. Atsley, saved me, and thenceforward I figured as one of the company. This strange Englishman I had met first in Prussia, where we had happened to sit vis-a-vis in a railway train in which I was traveling to overtake our party, while later I had a run across him in France and again in Switzerland twice within the space of 2 weeks. To think, therefore, that I should suddenly encounter him again here in Rittenberg. Never in my life had I known a more retiring man, for he was shy to the pitch of imbecility, yet well aware of the fact, for he was no fool. At the same time, he was a gentle, amiable sort of an individual, and even on our first encounter in Prussia, I had contrived to draw him out, and he had told me that he had just been to the North Cape, and was now anxious to visit the fair at the Nizhny Novgorod. How he had come to make the general's acquaintance I do not know, but apparently he was much struck with Paulina. Also, he was delighted that I should sit next to him at the table, for he appeared to look upon me as a bosom friend. During the meal, the Frenchman was in great feather. He was discursive and pompous to everyone. In Moscow, too, I remembered he had blown a great many bubbles. Interminably, he discoursed on finance and Russian politics, and though at times the general made feints to contradict him, he did so humbly, and as though wishing not wholly to lose sight of his own dignity. For myself, I was in a curious frame of mind. Even before luncheon was half finished, I had asked myself the old eternal question: why do I continue to dance attendance upon the general, instead of having left him and his family long ago? Every now and then I would glance at Paulina Alexandrovna, but she paid me no attention, until eventually I became so irritated that I decided to play the bore. First of all, I suddenly, and for no reason whatsoever, plunged loudly and gratuitously into the general's conversation. Above everything, I wanted to pick a quarrel with the Frenchman, and with that end in view, I turned to the general and exclaimed in an overbearing sort of way. Instead, I think that I actually interrupted him, that summer it had been almost impossible for a Russian to dine anywhere at tables d'hote. The general bent upon me a glance of astonishment. If one is a man of self-respect, I went on, one risks abuse by so doing, and is forced to put up with insults of every kind. Both at Paris and on the Rhine, and even in Switzerland, there are so many Poles with their sympathizers, the French at these tables d'hote, that one cannot get a word in edgewise if one happens only to be a Russian. This I said in French. The general eyed me doubtfully, for he did not know whether to be angry or merely to feel surprised that I should so far forget myself. Of course, one always learns something everywhere, said the Frenchman in a careless, contemptuous sort of tone. In Paris, too, I had a dispute with a Pole, I continued, and then with a French officer who supported him. After that, a section of the Frenchmen present took my part. They did so as soon as I told them the story of how once I threatened to spit into Monsieur's coffee. To spit into it? The general inquired with grave disapproval in his tone and a stare of astonishment, while the Frenchman looked at me unbelievably. Just so, I replied. You must know that on one occasion, when for 2 days I had felt certain that at any moment I might have to depart for a Roman business, I repaired to the embassy of the Holy See in Paris to have my passport visaed. There I encountered a sacristan of about 50, and a man dry and cold of mien. After listening politely, but with great reserve to my account of myself, the sacristan asked me to wait a little. I was in a great hurry to depart, but of course I sat down, pulled out a copy of L'Opinion Nationale, and fell to reading an extraordinary piece of invective against Russia, which it happened to contain.